Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's session, reality check session. I'm Louise Govia. I'm a white woman in my 50s wearing a turquoise top, have glasses and short blonde hair and a blurred background. I'm the Chief Executive of Artswork. We're a charity that empowers young people through creativity. And one of the things that we particularly hold dear at the heart of our practice is empowering young people to make change in their communities through big creative commissions. And because this is such an important part of our practice, we wanted to work with our colleagues at Arts Council South East and at Norfolk and Norwich Festival Connect and Create to set up this very informal network, but bringing together different people who all have an interest in youth voice and youth-led practice so that we can share practice and develop our practice together. So we've had 4 sessions. This is the 4th of 4 sessions online. Hopefully this will be the beginning of an ongoing conversation, sometimes in person, sometimes online, we'll see. But so far we've had sessions around why we want to enable and empower youth voice. We've had a session about listening to, hearing from young people, so creative consultation. We've had a session about co-creation, sharing creative power with young people to make something new and fantastic. And our final session is really hearing from young people themselves who've been empowered to take the lead and make change themselves. So this is about enabling young people to really go for it and do and say what they want to say. So we're going to explore today what their journeys through engagement, consultation, co-creation, and into leading change themselves have been like. We'll hear what's helped them to feel and actually be empowered along the way. We'll find out something about how organisations and creative practitioners can move from listening to young people and co-creating with them to really enabling them to take control. And I guess underlying all of this is a question. What do young people feel that older adults and people in power need to hear and to do in order to support them, young people, to take the lead? So we're going to start in our first part of our 2-hour session today by hearing from 3 different young people who'll give us some inspiration, some provocation and some practical tips. And we can ask them some questions and explore that a little bit more. We'll then have a short break, probably shortly before 4 o'clock. We'll then come back and break out into some small groups to engage in an activity that's been designed by another group of young people to help us to explore what different young people might need for them to be empowered to take part, to shape and to lead work, to really make a difference on their own terms. And we'll wrap up with some final observations and some signposting to further conversations and training, and we'll finish at 5 o'clock. So let's get started. We have 2 of our young speakers here. One is accompanying a school trip, and so will be joining us from a coach. That's the 3rd of our young speakers.
Prima is here.
Oh, Prima's here. That is marvellous. Fantastic. We're all here then. That's great. So we're going to start with hearing from first Jaden, then Jay, and then Prima about their journeys and about what they think organisations and people in power can practically do to make a difference and empower young people. So I'm going to start with Jay. Sorry, I'm going to start with Jaden. Dear, oh dear, right? That's how it's going to go. Never mind. So I'm going to hand over to Jaden and change the spotlight. One sec.
Am I good to go?
You are. I've just got to find you to spotlight you. Here we go. Got you there. At spotlight. There we go.
Amazing. Hey everyone, I'm Jaden Caulfield. I'm a white male, brown hair and glasses. 23 years old. I'm also from Salford. For context, when I was growing up in Salford was an area blighted by crime and violence. And as a young lad growing up on an estate known as the gun and gang capital of the North, I knew the reality of my postcode all too well. Many young people growing up in areas like mine were made to believe that they could amount to nothing but guns, gangs, and crime, that it was almost impossible to escape from the barriers of their postcode. And I think for a very long time, that very much felt like it would become my reality too. Until I was around 11 years old, I stumbled across a creative arts program for children in care. It was hosted by Lowry, an arts organisation in Salford, and they were hosting sessions every Monday evening. And at first, I never really thought of myself as much of an actor. But as soon as I started attending, I realised it was much more than just a creative arts program. It was much more than just about being an actor. It was a place where, for the first time in a very long time, I felt like I belonged. I think growing up in the care system, it's very difficult and very rare to feel like you belong anywhere. But organisations like Lowry and creative arts programs allowed for myself and so many other young people to feel that sense of belonging. And they gave us, I think, a real chance to escape the chaos of reality and just be. I think, as well as belonging and a break from life, they also gave me a level of confidence, an ability to vision my life beyond my postcode. I was also able to see my voice is powerful, and use it to call for change. I was able to experience opportunities that I would have never even knew existed if it wasn't for organizations on the ground working tirelessly to allow me to see and reach my potential. Because of the countless opportunities and support I was afforded through creative arts programs like the one at Lowry, I became incredibly passionate about the power of creativity to transform the lives of young people. I went on to become a trustee at the Lowry, the youngest serving trustee by quite a large margin. And it's been such a huge learning experience for me in becoming more confident that young people should have a voice at the very top of decision making tables. All of the growth that I went through as a young person on creative arts programs became a staple for much of my future work, including going on to co-design the UK's first ever youth-led supplementary school, founded to support young people to rediscover the joy in learning. This school was about allowing young people who had felt like they'd been failed by the education system or felt like they didn't learn in the ways that the traditional education system taught, and they wanted to ensure that other young people weren't failed, or that other young people had a place where they could really fall back in love with learning and find joy in learning. And so 8 young people came together quite angry at the education system. And at first we were just going to design a campaign. But at the end of the session, we realized that we could probably build a school, and we felt really empowered to do that. And so we built a supplementary school in South Manchester, which wanted to support young people to fall back in love with education, offering them free school meals throughout school holidays, and free school meals in the evening, so that the barriers to having a real joyful education were limited, or were reduced. And that was one of the ways that I really became to understand how powerful youth voice was, how powerful it was for young people to realize their power and do something with it. I've also gone on to sit on boards around the world, including across the UK, US, and Australia, to represent youth voice and campaign for the power of youth voice. In 2019, I founded a charity that would go on to support young people from underrepresented backgrounds across the Northwest to escape cycles of crime and violence through the use of creative and critical thinking and the development of leadership and emotional intelligence skills. Throughout all of this work, it has been very clear to me that we cannot hope for a better future without designing it alongside young people. We've seen how many young people have advanced campaigning across climate and education because of their hopes for a better future. I feel like we're at a moment in time where we know that we must include youth voice in creating a better future, and it is such a huge privilege to support organisations to do that work day to day. There have been two key things that underpin a lot of my current work. One is intergenerational collaboration and youth leadership. How are we sharing power with young people to change the world? How are we supporting organizations to work with young people to build futures that better solve the problems of today? And the second area is the power of creativity and critical thinking, whether it is how deeply creative engagement can transform young people's educational journey, or the power of creativity to transform and allow young people to discover their true selves. We cannot underestimate the power that creativity plays in the lives of young people. So these two things are only possible with the right support systems, though, the right mentors, the right teachers, the right youth workers, the right people who believe in the power of creativity and who believe that young people deserve a better future, no matter how bad their start in life may have been, or no matter how or what their postcode is. And when I look back on the things that have supported me, they really vary. And so it was quite difficult to think of the key things, the key recommendations. But when I think back about the key things that supported me, it's not the big lavish things that we often expect. For me, it's about having a place where I could go that had no expectation of me, but also believed that I was powerful. They allowed me to show up and bring whatever version of me I needed to bring in that moment. School can be that for so many young people. For others, it's youth organisations and creative spaces. There's a real varied spaces that it can be for young people, but it's so vital, especially for young people navigating turmoil. The second area is other things were knowing that someone believed in me. I owe a great level of debt to the mentors and youth workers and teachers in my life who have supported me, whether they've kept classrooms open late so I could do my homework because they know I wouldn't have been able to do it at home, whether it was youth workers who allowed me to hot desk from their office when I was really passionate about a project that I wanted to start, whether it was organisations that allowed me to run projects with their staff team, projects that I wanted to run with young people, and I was able to test it with their staff team. It's organisations and individuals taking a little bit of a chance and allowing you to feel powerful in that moment. There were small things like, yeah, like I mentioned, keeping the library open so I could do my homework, allowing me to hot desk from offices, allowing me to run sessions. There are so many ways that young people can be supported. But it's because of all of these things that I've been able to go on and lead work across the UK and across the world to influence and support organisations to realise the power of intergenerational collaboration. And I now do that through my own consultancy, where I'm trying to push more young people to work with organisations, to build youth boards, to build intergenerational collaboration strategies and implement them with organisations and support organisations to realise the power of having youth voice at the very highest level in their work. Yeah, thank you.
Amazing, Jaden. Thank you very much. I'm looking at our timings and amazingly on time. Fantastic. So I think we've got 5 minutes for some questions for Jaden, if you have them, participants. The easiest way is if you can go to the React and oh yes, raise your hand electronically. Because then you will come to the front of my screen or somebody's screen and we can see you. If not, pop something in the chat. But if you have any questions for Jaden, please do say so, and we can take those for a few minutes. Can't see any hands at the moment, but somebody will have something, I'm sure. Alternatively, unmute and shout out.
Hey Louise, it's EJ at Strike a Light.
Thank you.
Hi Jaden, thanks for talking to us. I'm really interested in how it feels to be a young board member amongst a group of people that might not be as young as you. And I asked that specifically because Jay is one of our youth board members, and a note that I'd written here was, should we connect young board members? Question mark.
Amazing. Feels incredible, but also really overwhelming. I think I came into the role. I think I'm very lucky that I knew the organisation really well before I went into my trustee position, and I think that was really important for me. I think when I first started, I felt massive imposter syndrome. Do I belong here? Am I just here because I'm a young person? All of that stuff, and the roles that I were given, did they feel quite tokenistic at the start? And so I think I juggled with that for a while. And then I started to really find my voice. I think when you start to speak up at the meetings and you start to realize, I have kind of my lived experience is just as important as the experiences that others bring in this space. And when you realize that you're there for a reason, I think that became powerful for me. I think I was also really, really well supported by the organization to come in as a trustee. I've had experiences in youth boards or in other trustee positions where I've not felt as well supported, and it felt quite tokenistic, my existence there. But I think in my one with the Lowry, it felt like they needed me to be there, or like I was adding value in a way, not necessarily needed, but I was adding value by being present, and it didn't feel tokenistic. I think there's a lot of work to do when you're the only young person in this space, in terms of also trying to support the organization to understand your needs, and to find your voice in that space, and realize that you deserve to be there. I think there's some work to do in terms of how organizations support young people to do that. But I think I've had a really positive experience. And I think it's encouraged me to believe that any organization that's representing young people should have young people on their board, at the highest level of decision making. And I think that's really important.
Fantastic, thank you. Any other questions for Jayden? You might
Hello
just
there. I have gone. Sorry, Olivia from TDC. Just wondered what incentives you think would be best to entice young people to become on a board, as well as how to keep them and make sure that they come back to the next meetings and everything.
Yeah, absolutely. First incentive is personal development, right? So you can't offer a monetary incentive. I think when you're doing like if you're doing youth advisory boards, I think where you can, like monetary incentives are really important. Young people, like valuing young people in that way is really important. I think trustee boards is quite different. I think when on a trustee board, one of the greatest things that trustee boards can do is offer young people personal development programs when they become a trustee. I think that's so important. Especially because young people, when we become trustees, we've not had the professional experiences of many of our peers on that trustee board, and so having that option for personal development alongside the organization that you're a trustee with is really, really important. I think for other boards, I think the monetary thing is important, but I also think once again personal development. I think having that conversation when you join a board, what skills do you want to develop, and then knowing that the organization is taking that really seriously. And when I first joined my board, one of my boards, I really wanted to develop networking, and I had an organization that was allowing me to go to events simply to just network. They didn't want me to speak on their behalf or anything like that. They just wanted me to go and network, make 3 LinkedIn contacts and stuff like that. And that became really, really important. I felt valued. I felt like they'd listened to me when I told them at the very start that I wanted to develop certain skills. And so I think personal development is really, really important. I think in terms of incentives to come back to the meetings, they have to feel heard, right? They have to feel like what they're saying is listened to. I think a lot of the time in youth boards, as someone who has ran youth boards on behalf of organizations, but also as someone who has been a young person on a youth board, I think the problem is organizations have a youth board for the sake of having a youth board, and actually a lot of the recommendations that happen in that youth board aren't taken seriously on an organizational level, or they're often taken as a nice to have, as opposed to these are recommendations that have come really clearly from our youth board, and we have to try our best to implement them in the same way that we would if our executive recommended these things. And there are obviously restrictions, but we have to take youth boards seriously. And I think once young people on a youth board feel like they're being taken seriously and feel like their role is really, really being taken seriously, they'll come back, and they'll feel valued. And I think that's the biggest thing, is making them feel valued, making them feel like their role is important. And yeah, making them feel like they have a role essentially. And I think that's the really important thing. And being realistic. Sorry, there's so many things, but being realistic with them. I think young people on boards often we're passionate and we want to change the world. And I think one of the most useful things is when an organization turns around to their youth board and they say, this is the remit that we're working within. Right, we can't change the world. We can't bring in a young CEO. We can't do this, but we're gonna dream to this, according to this ambition, according to this remit, because it helps the board be really practical. Because a youth board could make 10 recommendations that are above and beyond what the organization can actually do, And then because they've made them 10 recommendations and the organization can't do it, they feel useless. They've not implemented any of my recommendations. Whereas if you're really realistic with them from the start, they can make recommendations that can be implemented. And I think that's really important.
That's fantastic, Jaden. Thank you. Really, really brilliant. I think we will pause your contribution for the moment there and move on to our next speaker. But thank you. That was awesome. So we're going to move on now to Jay, who is, Jay is here, and Jay is our next speaker. So over to you, Jay.
Hi, my name is Jay Tyler. I'm a white man. I'm 21 years old. I have short blonde hair and glasses, and I've got a white background behind me. So I'm just going to tell my story from the start of when I started getting involved in like youth advocacy. And I've got a few slides with some photos just to illustrate that. So I'm going to hopefully successfully share my screen, and we'll see if that works. Cool. I hope you can see that. If you can, just shout at me. And if you can't hear me, if my audio goes weird because of that, just let me know. But cool. All right. So as you may or may not be aware of, 2019 saw the uprise of a huge global youth climate movement with protests happening across the world inspired by people like Greta Thunberg. And I was part of a young climate activist group in my city, which is Gloucester. Although our strikes weren't really as big as the ones in places like Bristol or London. I think so the photos here actually show our biggest strike, which had about maybe 200 people max. And sometimes after a strike had fizzled out, there'd only be about 8 of us left, just shouting on the streets after like people had kind of dispersed from the crowd. So yeah, I was in a youth activist group, and there was about maybe 5 to 10 members, some more active than others, and the age range was about 12 to 16 years old. I was actually on the upper end of the age. I think I was like 15 or 16 at the time. Yeah. So I'm involved with Strike a Light, but before I tell you how I got involved, I'm just going to quickly describe what Strike a Light does, like a brief little description. So Strike a Light programs events for the people of Gloucester, telling people stories through performance and creating participation opportunities for young people. They bring high quality national touring work to the city and allow locals to experience it. And they very much work for the community in Gloucester. Strike a Light is non-venue based, and they've held events and shows in various different locations across Gloucester. So indoors, outdoors, in community centres, schools, churches, even on a roof, and loads more. So the way we met Strike a Light was through one of their staff members actually coming along to one of our strikes. So it was the former co-artistic director, Sarah. She came along to one of our strikes and she asked us, can Strike a Light help you in any way? We said, we'd like a space to hold our meetings. So Strike a Light offered us their office space to use once a week to hold our meetings. So every Wednesday evening, we'd go to Strike a Light office and meet there for 2 hours to plan strikes and stuff and discuss youth climate activism. And over time, we developed a relationship with Strike a Light. And one thing they did for us was actually to get us a speaker so that we didn't have to shout so loudly when we were doing our strikes. I think we had like a tiny little megaphone, but it wasn't very good. So they got us like a proper big speaker, and that was really useful. Strike a Light also helped us to put on an event to raise some awareness about what we were trying to do. So the main thing we did, right, in 2020, just before lockdown, Strike a Light took us to London to see a show by a group of Brazilian activists, which was called When It Breaks, It Burns. And here is us at that event. So it was about this an activist group in Brazil who had occupied schools after the government was trying to shut loads of them down in Brazil. And it was such an inspiring show. It was like nothing we'd ever seen before. I was 16 and it blew my mind, the kind of show they put on. And we felt really, really inspired by that. So we discussed making a show of our own, and we were all very on board with that idea. Unfortunately, lockdown then happened because this was in about February 2020, and then we all know what happened. But regardless of that, Strike a Light put some money behind the project and put out an advert for our director for this show. So we wanted to make a show about our story of being youth activists in Gloucester, but also the wider picture of the youth climate movement, incorporating stories and words of international activists with the show. And here's our poster for the show. It was called I Stand For What I Stand On. So this first one here is actually from a scratch we did We did that at our local cathedral, actually. And then we then developed it into a proper set, which you can see on the right. Yeah, but yeah, it was great. So we rehearsed online originally because it was lockdown, but then eventually we could do in-person rehearsals. And over the course of about a year, we developed the show, so it was fully completed. And we actually got accepted to go to COP26 in Glasgow, which is a huge deal. If you don't know what it is, it's Conference of the Parties. It's an international conference where they talk about climate change, basically. But a huge deal for us to go to COP. So we went to Glasgow for a week. This was in November 2021 now. And we joined the Fridays for Future school march, where there were about maybe like over 30,000 young people marching in the streets of Glasgow, which very much beats our about 8 people in Gloucester at times. So here's some photos of us at the strike. You can see it was huge. It's the biggest strike I think I've ever been to, possibly. We then had to run across Glasgow so we could make our performance slot, where we performed at COP and also went through a lot of security. They didn't like us bringing in signs. They thought we were going to do something bad, but we got in eventually. Yeah, and it's very important to note that none of us had any experience performing. We weren't youth theatre members. We were just
It's early bird.
we were just 4 ordinary young people from Gloucester who were not performers in the slightest. But we managed to perform at COP, and that was like a dream come true, honestly. So following the show, we operated as an activist group for a bit longer, and then eventually went our separate ways due to like uni and other commitments. But we all very much stayed involved in climate activism in our own ways, in our own personal lives. And we also stayed in contact with Strike a Light. I'm actually the only remaining member of the original cast that still lives in Gloucester. And a year or so later, so I think it's 2023, Strike a Light were hiring for trustees. And they contacted me and informed me about the opportunity, saying they're looking specifically for a youth voice and also someone who could hold them accountable on their environmental responsibility as an organisation. At the time, I didn't actually know what a trustee was or what the role involved. And I would not have applied if I wasn't encouraged to do it or felt like it was a space that I could occupy. But I applied for the position and I was successful. And I've now served on the board for a little over a year. And I'm the youngest on it at 21 years old. I'm also the environmental champion for the board, which means I lead on environmental responsibility. Because we are Arts Council funded, it is one of their 4 investment principles to report back on. So environmental responsibility is one of those investment principles. Around the same time I was appointed as a trustee, Strike a Light had hired 2 external climate consultants to help revise their environmental policy and develop a climate action plan. And I got involved with some parts of the project that I felt I had the right skills for. And actually just in the last month or so, I helped to co-deliver 2 presentations about the project, the outcomes and the next steps of that. So one presentation to the Board of Trustees and another to the staff team. And this was amazing. Like it felt like a full circle moment, from Strike a Light helping a local youth activist group to give them the space for their meetings, to then empowering us to perform our story of climate activism around the country and at COP, and then to giving me the opportunity to serve as a trustee to help deliver a climate action project and directly lead on and contribute to the environmental responsibility and sustainability of the organisation through youth-led practice. So it's been a real journey over the last 5 or 6 years. And I just think it's amazing that a young person like myself has been empowered to take up that space and go beyond co-creation to a youth-led initiative. So I've got a few top tips here for you guys about how you can actually get young people involved in leading. So my first tip is to get involved with the youth scene where you work. So if it wasn't for one of Strike a Light's staff team coming to our strike, none of this would have ever happened. So you can't expect young people to come to you. They're not going to naturally do that. You have to go into their spaces and talk to them and like ask what you can provide. Which leads me on to the second one. Second point is providing young people with opportunities that will interest them and inspire them. So when Strike a Light took us to London to see that show, that was genuinely one of the most inspiring things that like probably changed my life actually. And if it hadn't been for that, I wouldn't have really got involved with arts. Like I wasn't particularly interested in it. I hadn't ever thought about performing or anything like that. But it dramatically changed my view on that. And it was something I was really, really into. And the third point is to invite young people to take up space. So like I said, I didn't even know what a trustee was. I didn't know anything about organizational practice or anything like that. But to be told, like, we have a space for you, we would welcome you as a young person and we want to hear your voice, that is so important, because I don't think young people typically know they're allowed to take up that space. Yeah, thank you for listening. I hope that was good to hear. I will stop
Fantastic.
sharing now.
Yeah, no, that was awesome. Thanks very much, Jay. So, are there questions for Jay, please? Either stick up an electronic hand or shout out, as long as we don't shout out all at once. That would be great. I'm so impressed that you got to go and perform at COP. I mean, you know, that's quite something, isn't it? Any questions for Jay, please? Do just, oh, that's on time. Do just speak if you would rather speak rather than do the electronic hand thing, if that's easier. Sam, I can see a hand.
Hey, Jay. I'll stick my camera on to be friendly, but I don't know if you can see me or not. Yeah, great story. Thanks for sharing it. I mean, you kind of already answered a bit of it, but I'll ask it anyway. But I just wanted to know more about, like, your initial, when you were sort of asked to be a trustee, kind of what were your initial, like, thoughts, and did you have any kind of, I don't know, like, reservations or kind of worries about what it might involve, and how did the organization kind of support you with that? Yeah, because you mentioned that, like, you didn't know what a trustee was or anything like that. So yeah.
Yeah. So similar to Jane, actually, I kind of felt like I did have a bit of imposter syndrome because I felt I wasn't experienced as the other trustees. I wasn't particularly knowledgeable about the art sector, and you have to read like so many documents and financial things. So it was kind of a bit of a challenge, but I was ready to take that on. And the way Striker Light supported me is, I remember in board meetings, they actually said, like, we want to make sure we feel like we're supporting you. Like, is there anything you want to say, or is there anything we can do for you? So specifically having that bit of time and it being addressed within a board meeting was really useful. And I think I grew into the role. At the start, I was kind of like, I don't know what anyone's talking about. But it was useful to know the organization for, again, similar to Jaden, being so involved within the organization, it kind of gave me a leg up when I became a trustee. So even though I didn't know how to like review documents or anything like that, I knew Strike a Light, and that helped.
Okay. Cool. That's great. Yeah, that's really good to hear. I think like, most people, I mean, I would feel the same if I was sort of, being asked to be a trustee of an organization. It's probably really common to come in somewhere and have that imposter syndrome. So it's, but yeah, I think it's just a really good thing for an organization to think about how they're being, inclusive to anybody. So yeah, thanks for sharing that.
Yeah,
And
100%.
Sam and Jay, I hope you don't mind me coming in on that. I think Striker Light are trying to do things in good ways, and we definitely don't always get it right the first time we do it. But I think it's really important to acknowledge that you're doing it in the best way that you know at that point, but to be really open and clear to the people that you're working with that you can do better. And so being able to listen. I think my point here that I'm not making very concisely is that we had an ongoing relationship with Jay before he came onto the board, and we were having a relationship with a really articulate and confident young person. That's how I view you, Jay. I don't know if that's how you felt inside. And I've definitely seen you grow and develop from a 16-year-old person to a 21-year-old young adult. But I think that had we not had that relationship with Jay before we invited him onto the board, and if Jay wasn't as articulate as he is, we may actually be having quite a different conversation. So we kind of looked out a little bit, And I think there's so much more to be considering about how you work with young people when they're on boards. And ours isn't a youth board, ours is our actual board of trustees. So the level of responsibility is crazy and ridiculous. And just listening to Jaden talk, I've written a load of notes down here. We don't offer Jay a personal development program, and we should. Doing these kind of talks and working with Jay on our climate work is those first steps into how do we support and develop Jay as a board member. But we're definitely not 100% doing it correctly. And I think being able to have these kinds of conversations will really help us develop how we're holding Jay and future young board members.
Well said. Thanks, CJ.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. I think it's really interesting because we're having a conversation about young people being on boards and really part of central to the governance of organisations. But both Jay and Jaden have also spoken about other things that they just did with other young people that were nothing to do with organisations, if you like, and the organisations were kind of almost incidental in helping to support with whatever they needed, whether it was a meeting place or some confidence. So I think it's really brilliant to think about boards and governance, and it's also just great to think about what can we all do to enable young people to just go off and do whatever they want, regardless of us and our thoughts. Fantastic, thank you. I'm going to move on to our final speaker then for this part. Thank you so much, Jay. That was really inspiring and interesting. So we're going to move then to Prima, and I'm just going to spotlight Prima. Sorry, you end up with the me doing at the same time. Here we go. I can see Prima. There we are. Hi, Prima. Right.
Hello. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Prima. I'm a 21-year-old Bangladeshi woman, blurred background, and wearing a red hijab at the moment. So I'm here to talk about, I guess, my journey in terms of change making and creative change making, and how various adults have both supported me through this journey, but also what didn't work out so well too when it came to supporting young people through change making. And so I've always had a really, really strong love for STEM, and something I always felt was there's a lot of creativity in STEM as well. My mum, she's an artist, and she works with recycled materials to create really, really stunning and functional pieces of artwork. When coming to this country, knew she wasn't speaking the language and she had various different health issues. And because of that, she had lost most of her independence. And as a child, I really wanted her to have the confidence to be able to pursue her talents and to be able to bring her artwork into the world. So at this point, I had my own little love for STEM and creativity within STEM fostering, and then this big vision for just art and recycled materials and teaching about sustainability through it. And so at 14, and I'm really sorry if my voice is a little crackly at the moment. At 14, I had started a business. So what I wanted her to do was to be able to work with me to push on sustainability and environment and teach others and bring communities together. So that's what I did at 14. At that age as well, I was quite a shy child. I was very, very shy, very, very nervous. But when it came to starting the business up, I remember we had an opportunity for us to be able to present the business to a group of adults who could potentially fund it. And I came onto the stage and actually I was beaming. So despite all the shyness that I normally bring in, I was beaming and excited. And I'm so grateful for the adults who did take a chance on me at that point at 14 and gave our business that funding to really kickstart what brought about a lot of change. At 14, I was also working at a tuition centre at the moment. Well, I was volunteering to start with, and then I began working at said tuition centre. Once again, I had another adult who took a chance on me and went, wait a sec, you're really good at this and you're really passionate about this. You want to take this a step further. And she gave me opportunities to actually be able to work with students, with young people one-to-one, and that kind of pushed me to start my own little tutoring business where I would want to work with and inspire other young people. Through both businesses, I was able to create meaningful change during my teenage years. So my mum and I repeatedly brought communities together so that we could explore culture, identity, history through recycled materials. I managed a project that taught primary age children about endangered animals using recycled art, and this initiative actually ended up in the Natural History Museum as well. During the COVID lockdowns, we connected care home residents through online recycled art workshops. And at the same time, with the support of my incredible school teachers, I went from really lacking confidence in myself and my own STEM abilities to understanding my love for it. And because of that, I was able to push that onto my students through my own tutoring business and push them and empower them to also follow their ambitions. Because I felt a lot of the time people would come to me and they'd go, actually, this is too hard, too scary. And I was like, no, it's really, really fun. So those things were happening at the moment. And both these positives, I guess, came from the fact that adults around me really took a chance with me and gave me the opportunity to be able to explore both businesses. But growing up at the same time, I had a lot of different challenges, and because of that, I had a lot of responsibilities on my shoulder. And when I was young, I was really looking forward to being an adult. I was like 9 and I was thinking, I want to make my own money and I want to do this and that. But it wasn't about me being a child looking for my independence. Really, what I was looking for was for someone to be able to take me seriously, for the adults around me to be able to take me seriously. And as a child, I thought that could only be achieved by being an adult myself. Which was not true because a lot of the times I would be told that I'm too young, I don't know what I'm doing, I don't know what I'm talking about, my ideas aren't going to work out, I'm speaking out of emotions and not logic, so it's unrealistic. I've had people tell me I'm dreaming too big, which causes people inconveniences from various adults around me. So you can see the difference, I guess, between the ones who are empowering me and the ones who really brought me down. Because of that, as I navigated primary and secondary school, my trust in adults around me really, really varied. I felt that I'm really, really sorry for my crackly voice at the moment. I felt that the weight of my words often felt very light in the hands of the adults who were trying to help me. And although most of them did have my very best intentions at heart, the problem came is they didn't always make me feel heard. And because of this, no solutions came until I was old enough to do things myself, in which case what I thought as a child was unfortunately the truth. I wasn't taken seriously until I had hit a certain age by a lot of adults. By the time I was actually 16, I had seriously considered dropping out of school to go into work full time because, again, I was getting tired of people not taking me seriously. But then I had found, again, yet another adult who took a chance on me and mentored me and let me explore creativity through STEM, which again lit that creative spark in me and fueled me through those last 2 years of education. And the impact the mentor had on me, again, I put back into the young people I work with now, because now it's like I want them to also push through and get the education if that's what they want to do, despite anything that they're struggling with. I feel very strongly that I don't want young people to feel that their circumstances define them and that they can, in fact, pursue anything that they're passionate about. The older I got, the more time and energy I put into both of these businesses, my creative one and my tutoring one. And at 18, I had made the decision not to pursue higher education or apprenticeships, and instead I stepped directly into the world of work. So, but in the background, so although I didn't initially get into the jobs I'm in now, in the background I had the very same passion. So I was still passionate about empowering young people, about helping them overcome obstacles, and about ensuring that everyone had the opportunities to chase their dreams. And because of that, by 20, I was actually able to secure 2 of my dream jobs. The first one being placemaking creative producer, artwork. This has been absolutely amazing. And also computer science subject lead at a school in Slough. And both of these, again, focused on just empowering young people. So I was able to hit empowerment through creativity at artwork, and also empowerment through creativity within STEM as a teacher. Now, you'll notice that I've mentioned age a lot in this speech, but it's because until I was actually legally considered an adult, my age was a defining factor in how serious people took me. So the truth is, my passion for change, what was in me, my thoughts, my ideas, they've been the same. At 21 now, I'm still working with the same determination, same passions, and same thoughts that I had at 18, that I had at 16, that I had at 14, and even the ones that I had at 9. So I'm still being the same person, but with time, I gained more respect from adults around me, which enabled me to make that change. But this shouldn't be the case at all, because the most basic form of respect is to always listen to someone and engage with them as equals. This is a level of respect that everyone knows all young people deserve regardless of their age, because everyone has their own valuable perspective and ideas that we might not have considered. At the moment at Artswork, I'm actually working with young people right now to create an animation called What Makes a Good Social Worker. And young people are coming together to explain to adults who are here to look after them and here in positions of power how to connect with them. And I guess the central theme in this animation is the importance of truly listening to young voices, because there is still a significant disconnect between what young people are saying and how much is actually being taken on board. You know, real progress can actually only happen when we stop talking about young people and start talking with them, because every single young person brings their own perspective. It's important not to put people into molds, and it's sometimes difficult not to, but because I guess what teachers, etc., they're busy, they've got so many students to deal with that it becomes overwhelming to deal with people one-to-one. But wherever possible, we really need to try and give our all to looking into and listening to each and every young person. It's important to always just take that leap of faith and trust young people, treat them as equals, and just enable them and empower them, because society thrives when young people are leading the conversations.
Fantastic. Thank you, Prima. Thank you for sharing. That's a lot of rich stuff there. What questions or comments do we have from our participants today for Prima, please? Do stick up an electronic hand or just speak. And we could hear you fine, Prima. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, thank you for the messages.
Hello, Prima. Thank you for your story and everything. That was brilliant. I just wondered, where was it that you presented at 14? Where you put your business, and what was the business idea, please?
So the business idea was I wanted to be able to teach people using recycled materials about sustainability, but also bring communities together through it. So having recycled materials around you, being able to reuse them and repurpose them into new functional things. So we're hitting the reuse, but also bringing communities together at the same time. What it was within our community, there was a grant, and they wanted, it was a creative grant and it was pretty open. It was, we have this amount of money and which group wants to come make change in our community. So I was like, okay, let's do this. Like, I'll apply. And I was really scared about it because I saw it pretty last minute. And as I said, I was a very shy and nervous child. But I went up and I was just really passionate about the business and about the change it can make. And because of that, I guess the passion showed through and we received the funding.
Brilliant, thank you. Out of interest, are you still doing it?
Yeah, I'm still doing it. I'm still running both businesses, yeah.
Can we have the name so we can have a Google, please?
Well, it's neither of them are on Google. We're just like, it's by word of mouth that keeps us busy at the moment. My one is just me tutoring, and then my mom's one, we do it under her name, Fahima Mahbub. And yep, it's through word of mouth we've been kept busy. We are looking to make an online presence, but at the moment I'm focused on my job and making change through these jobs.
Brilliant, thank you.
No problem.
Are there other questions for Prima? I have one if not. So it was really interesting that you said that it was so important for young people to feel heard, to be listened to and to feel heard. What were the things that made it so that you felt heard? How did you, what were things that people did that really made you feel heard?
I guess so. It's interesting because it seems like it should be such a simple thing, but often it's not. So what made me feel heard was when the adults around me in various different positions, they took the time to hear out what I was saying, to hear out my opinions on things and what I thought would be happening, what I thought is happening, and engaged in conversation, I guess. And again, it seems like this should be a basic thing, but it wasn't. It wasn't common or often at all. And then, a lot of these things will be explored in, because the young people, they're care experienced young people creating this animation, what makes a good social worker. They're all things I resonate with when the adults were respectful of my time as well. So they weren't, I'll come see you at this time so that we can talk. And then you hear back an hour or two later, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't make it. Stuff like that with my youth worker, that happened quite a bit. Also taking my ideas on board and then taking it further. So obviously some things you can't, like, realistically you can't make happen straight away. That's okay. But actually going, right, we've taken this idea, we've thought about it, how about these ways? Laying it out and making decisions with the young person rather than for the young person. So just working in collaboration at every single point is essentially, communicating with them as you would communicate with any other adult colleague and giving them that chance, giving them that space.
Brilliant, thank you. Really appreciate your input and telling your story today. Prima and Jay and Jaden are going to be with us for the rest of our session. And so we're going to go into a little break now. And we would love you to just think about something while you're boiling the kettle or doing whatever you need to do, which is to just think about, from what you've heard and what you know, your experience as well, what can adults and people in power do to empower young people, to hear them, to respond to them, to respect them, to empower them. And here is, we'll leave this up on the screen, a little Menti code that if you can hover your phone camera over that, that should lead you to a Menti poll where you can put your response in. And we will, if you do, especially just, a word or a couple of words, we will get a sense of what your thinking is. If you could come back for 4:05, please, so just under 10 minutes for a break, that would be lovely. And thank you very much again to Jaden, to Jay and Prima, who, as I say, will be, we can, I'm sure, put that link into the chat as well, Lara. Thank you. Thank you. We'll see you at 4:05, everybody. Well, welcome back, everyone. Hopefully you're just coming back in. And interesting to see what's on the Menti, that what we can do to empower young people to lead and listen is the biggest thing. Support, ask what they want, understand, allow failure, be transparent, be a safe place. Quite a lot of mention of being safe and being respectful, give space, active listening. Fantastic, thank you. We'll leave that open so more people coming back have more to add. Please do. And then we're going to go into our second section for today. And I'm just going to see if I can, yeah, I can add a spotlight to Claire. Next session is being led by Claire and also Mara. Look, this is like theatrical as I add a spotlight, and then to Ree. Here we go. And I'm going to take the spotlight off me. Oh, if I can do that. Yes, I can do that. So I'm handing over to Claire and Mara and Ree, who have devised and are going to introduce and lead the next part of our session.
I'll just share my screen quickly. Hi, I'm Ree. I'm a creative producer apprentice in Dover for Artswork. I'm a woman in my 20s. I have brown hair. I'm wearing glasses and a red jumper, and my background is blurred.
Hi, I'm Mara. I'm a creative producer apprentice for Artswork on the Isle of Wight. I'm a woman in my early 20s. I have brown hair that's up in a ponytail. I'm wearing a burgundy jumper and I have a blurred background.
Hi everyone, my name's Claire and I'm a creative producer apprentice for Slough at Artswork. I am a woman in my 20s with brown hair. I'm wearing a black cardigan and my background is blurred.
So we're doing a two-part activity, which is based around youth leadership, where you'll be put into small breakout rooms. We'll be giving you some insight to what helps us within our roles, which we hope will help you when you're working with young people.
So we want to ask you, and please write your answers in the chat, what sorts of ways might young people engage with or work with your organisation? So some examples of this could be festivals, participating in a workshop or consultation, joining a drop-in event, being part of an art youth group, or simply volunteering. So far in the chat, we've got taking part in creative consultations, being part of art youth groups, but also youth advocacy and creative consultations, leading changemaker programs and forming part of the membership of our CIC. So just keep this question in mind and we will move on to our first activity and just keep popping your answers in the chat.
So for our first activity, we would like you to draw a fictional young person helping to run an event. We'd like you to describe who they are and how that impacts their experience. So imagine the young person that you might be engaging with, and what's their personality like? Are they shy, confident, ambitious, school avoidant? What motivates them? What are they passionate about? So sport, music, art, something like that. What experiences have they had, and what barriers might they be facing? And so we have created some examples of personas to show you how you could complete this activity. And the first persona's traits are anxious, they're school avoidant, they have imposter syndrome, and they're neurodivergent.
So this person also enjoys reading and they use it as a way of reducing stress or anxiety. They find it hard to communicate and they find public speaking difficult, want to improve their confidence and enjoys being creative. They rely on the instructions of others and they are uncertain about themselves, lacking confidence in their own ability.
How might this person feel helping to run an event? So they could be unsure of event specifics and are too anxious to ask. They might be observing others in leadership positions and waiting to be told what to do. They might struggle with communication and public speaking. They might become easily overwhelmed and may need to isolate to recover. And they might enjoy doing repetitive tasks such as putting up posters.
So The second persona is someone who is confident, talkative, outgoing, and decisive.
So this person is sporty, they make friends through joining different groups, they enjoy networking and public speaking, they're self-assured and they know what they want to do in most situations. They look for guidance, but they're happy to work independently, and they don't worry about things that are outside of their control.
And so when this person's at an event, they may feel unsure on the event specifics, but they could also then seek clarification. They may be able to take initiative with tasks, and they might enjoy communicating with stakeholders and public speaking at events, and they might feel confident in their own ability to complete these tasks. So we will now be splitting you up into breakout rooms, and using the examples we have shown you, it's now time for you to work in groups to make a persona that reflects a young person you may work with. Remember to consider their personality traits, motivations, barriers, and experiences. And when you come back into the main room, please share details about your young person in the chat.
So you want one imaginary persona per group, is that right?
Yeah.
And they could be anything. So they could be like the examples you've shared, or they could be completely different. It's for the group to decide. Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah.
Right. And how long will people have for this task? I will open the rooms in a sec.
There will be roughly about 10 minutes.
About 10 minutes. Okay. All right. I will open the rooms, and we'll see you on the other side, ready to share who the sorts of persons that people that you've imagined. Thank you.
So yeah, just keep sharing in the chat of all the different things that you guys thought about. And then we'll move on to the next.
So you'd like to hear from people what some of their imagined young people, their imagined personas for young people are in the chat.
Yeah, I can't see the chat myself, so if someone wanted to read them out.
I can see it. So if we get some in, when we get some in, I can say. People may be typing away. It's quite a useful technique, this, to imagine a person whose shoes you want to put yourself in, to think about what might work for them. May take a moment for those to appear in chat, so maybe crack on with activity 2.
Yeah. Okay, so for the second part of this activity, we'd like to ask you, what can you as creative practitioners or organizations do to support your imaginary young person to find their voice and to take the lead? Consider what would help them to make the most of their passions and personality, of their experiences so far, and to overcome potential barriers. And these are some things that helps us to find our voices and take the lead. So clear communication with internal and external teams, being empowered to work independently, and being involved in planning meetings.
There is also being given techniques to cope with anxiety, using feedback to improve and adjust, being able to understand strengths as well as areas for improvement, and being challenged to work outside of our comfort zones.
And it has been helpful to be given the space to learn from mistakes, to be trusted with important tasks and responsibilities, to be encouraged to lead meetings, and to be informed of event details throughout. And we thought about the ways that we were able to develop using the support that has been provided, and the positive impact that this has had on us. And using this, we were able to highlight how we have developed within our roles and how other young people may develop in theirs. And so we thought that given these tools, a young person may be able to have a more active role. They may be able to take responsibility of different areas like logistics, and then being involved with the whole planning stage will be able to help them with their own confidence.
They are now able to regulate their anxiety better to avoid any overwhelm, and are more willing to speak in public.
They're also able to communicate clearly and effectively with stakeholders and their own team. They're able to research and manage event suppliers, and they're able to do complex tasks and take initiative.
So now we have shown you what's helped us find our voice and the things it has enabled us to do. We'll put you back into breakout rooms where you can write what you can do to support the young person that you've created in order to allow them to take the lead and find their voice. Consider what would help them make the most of their passions and personality. And again, when we come back, please write these ideas in the chat.
Okay, I will open the breakout rooms now. And again, are you thinking about 10 minutes or so for this part of the task? Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. I think everyone's back in the main room. Yeah, I think so. Over to you, Claire and Mara and Ree, to finish up.
I'm going to share my screen again. Yeah, so thank you everyone for your time today. If you had anything you'd like to share about what you've learned, we'd really like to hear it. And yeah.
Fantastic. So if you can put anything in the chat about what you talked about, things that might help your young people, if there's anything you want to shout out or stick up an electronic hand and speak to save the typing, that's also good. What did you learn from that exercise of putting yourselves in the shoes of a young person?
Hey, I just wanted to share something that we talked about in our breakout room that really struck a chord with us, and we got really, really passionate about it. Was the whole thing about paying young people for work, and I think it's just really interesting how there's this assumption when you first start working in the arts that you should be sort of so grateful that you got an opportunity, and and just like really not ask for much, when actually in reality you are doing a lot of work that's really valuable and you should be compensated for it. And if it's not money, it should be the ability to eat that day for free, or whatever it is, but there has to be some compensation, especially a bit of payment. Is what's encouraging people to marginalize young people as well to come into the room and really be themselves. So yeah, I think that's one of the big things that we talked about.
Sure. I don't know, Mara, Ree and Claire, if you want to respond to that particular thing. What are your feelings about that?
I'm particularly passionate about this. They really need to be paid. And I know people keep saying providing what they eat or their travel, etc. I disagree. They should just be paid.
Okay. I know you won't be alone in that thought and that belief. Oh, I'm trying to see chat messages. Thank you for speaking out. I can see that there are some new messages, but I can't see them. Okay. Yes, I see you put that, Lara. Thank you. Are there other responses, or people want to share what you talked about in your groups and the sorts of things that you think would make a difference? Here we go. Yep, paying people, going to places or spaces familiar to young people, not expecting them to come to you. You all said that as well, didn't you? Yeah, go to where they already are. Use Minecraft to engage. Yeah. Giving young people space to make mistakes. Yeah. Open and honest communication, but respecting them and their competency. Having predetermined expectations, allowing the chance for your ideas to change. Yeah. Sharing images that inspire them, holding an open space to meet them as individuals. Fantastic. Taking young people out to see stuff. Yeah, fantastic. Anyone else want to share speaking as well as in the chat? Okay.
We
Well,
talked about approaching the young people that we were working with on maintaining a really professional relationship. That makes it sound like it's more of a safeguarding thing, which isn't what I mean at all. That it was about sharing and working from industry best practice in all of the processes that we work through together, so that, which is both a kind of offer, a learning offer for young people, as well as a matter of respect in the way that they are related to by us as an organisation, and at the same time putting all those standardized ways of doing things, like recruitment, on the table to share, sharing our best practice, but also making the invitation to, if you want to mix that up and develop it, if you've got ideas for other ways we could approach this, let's have that on the table now. This was Isabel, I hope I'm not mangling your point, because really this was your point.
Yeah.
Bringing out.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, just echoing again, just that kind of treating them like kind of professionals and grown-ups, especially when that want to become leadership. I think people want to know why they're doing stuff, or why that is the best practice, both so they can learn from it and they can also challenge it. So they can say, actually, I find this a barrier when I apply for things. So could we do something about that? Or yeah, just that was kind of perfectly summarized by Becky anyway.
Brilliant. Any comments from Mara, Claire and Ree, having done this exercise? Anything that you particularly want to bring out for people?
I think it was nice for us to kind of, when we were creating that presentation, it gave us the chance to kind of reflect on what had worked for us and how that we can tell that to other people to help them in those situations. But yeah, it was nice to think about where we've like taken the lead and been given opportunities and things like that.
Yeah, and I think something that's come up a few times is that communication and making sure that it's, I guess, supportive as well, and when giving feedback, that it really makes sure that the young people know that they're not necessarily in the wrong, or if they've made mistakes, that it's not the end of the world and that they can come back from that and learn from it. And there's that support there with that communication, and then being given that confidence to help empower them in the future as well.
Fantastic. Anything else to add, Claire? Or has it all been said?
I think it's all pretty much been said. I think we spoke about it in our group as well, that being allowed to make mistakes is really important, and not feeling like that isn't okay. Like, it's nice to know that if you do that, you have a team there supporting you, even if something does go wrong.
Fantastic. Oh, well, thank you so much. That was a really interesting exercise to go through and to be part of, and really appreciate your the time you spent using your experiences to put that together for us all. Thank you. I am just gonna do I'm going to do this. I'm just going to do this. Thank you. And then just come to wrapping up. And actually, to do our wrap up, we often have some reflection from Jen, who we work with, Jen Raven, who's a consultant who's been working with Norfolk and Norwich Festival Connect and Create. But this time we're going to ask our young speakers, our three first speakers from the first half, and also Claire, Ree and Mara from the second half of our session, to wrap up with what they have, one thing that they've heard that they thought was really important, that people should take away. Before I come to them and ask them for their final contributions, there's a couple of things to do. One is just to signpost where we could take this conversation next. Some people have been coming to all the sessions, some people have dropped in and out, but I think we all feel that there's a sheer number of people who've been engaged and coming back to these conversations. Signals that there's a lot of interest, there's a lot of brilliant work happening, a lot of practice, and people wanting to talk and share and develop. So there are a number of things that we can do. I know that Arts Council in South East are offering some more advice sessions for anyone who's perhaps considering putting in a project grant application that has youth voice, youth-led practice at its heart. We've emailed round some of those opportunities, and we'll do that again as a follow-up to this. Artswork has some training to follow on from this on offer if people are interested. I'll put this in the chat now, and there's our website and links to some of that training. And of course, if you've been part of this session, you have access to the Thinkific learning platform, where there are lots more resources, including Arts Council's resource about youth voice and youth-led practice, which is a really good place to start. So again, we'll send those links and top tips around afterwards. The last bit of this, before we have final words from our speakers today, is to ask you, as we always do, just to fill in just a few questions about how hopefully useful this has been or not, or to tell us what we could do better. So I'm just going to launch that now, and if you're able to do that, we'll just take a few minutes for you to do this. Always easier to do it in the moment. Jaden, if you are here and I can't see you, shout and I'll highlight you. But I'm going to leave that poll open, so if you're still answering, please carry on doing that. But I just want to come to each of our speakers to ask what one thing that you have heard during this session that you really want to kind of underline for participants. And I'll just go in order of who's on my screen. So Claire, do you want to kick us off? What one thing do you want to say to people?
So I actually wrote down some quotes while people were speaking, so I thought I could just share those. So one of them was, "We cannot hope for a better future without designing it alongside young people." And the other one was, "Stop talking about young people and start talking with them."
Amazing, thank you. Jay.
So this is something someone in my breakout group said. It's easy for an adult to be an adult, but it's hard to remember what it was like when they were young, which just underlines why you have to listen to young people, and you may not see the reason behind what they do, but you once were young and you kind of need to, I don't know, go back to your roots.
Fantastic, thank you. Mara.
Yeah, I think similarly about bringing young people into the conversation and being able to support them both in and outside of their comfort zones.
Fantastic, thank you. Ree.
Mine was inviting young people to take up a space. I feel like it shows that you care what they have to say when you're inviting them there.
Yeah, a really good point. Prima, you get the last word.
Mine was just about respecting young people's time, just like we would respect an adult. So it was mentioned about paying them, making sure we pay them, just being on time, listening to them, taking everything in. I think all of these are really good and important points. And then we were speaking in our group as well about the importance of going to the places where the young people actually are.
Yes, absolutely. Oh, really critical. Brilliant. Thank you all so much. So that's the end of our session and the end of this series. We may well be back in the future with other ways to carry on this conversation, so watch this space. But can I just end by thanking all the participants for coming and taking part over the last few months, but most of all, a huge thank you to Claire, to Jay, Mara, Jaden, Ree and Prima for giving us the benefit of your experience and your patience today. Really, really appreciate it. Thank you so much, everyone, and have a lovely evening. Hope it's sunny where you are. Thank you. Bye-bye.